Hello, welcome to This Week in Politics. We keep hearing about an attempted coup d'etat on our President Trump. And I kept trying to figure out what that would look like and how that would happen. Now, everybody thinks that the coup d'etat will be complete when Trump leaves office. And I kept thinking, that just doesn't, what if that doesn't happen? Does the deep state just give up and roll over? And if they never change, what happens to the power they've accumulated so far? Does it just go away and start over every 4 years? So then I went to dictionary and I looked up the word coup. And I want you to listen to this. A sudden appropriation of leadership or power. A takeover. That's what a coup is. A sudden appropriation of leadership or power. And I realized, as soon as I read that definition, I realized that the coup had taken place before Trump took over. And I'm going to refresh your memory because I was shocked when this happened. Do you remember the transition when Trump asked the Department of Energy for the names of everybody in there that had been appointed by Obama? Perfectly legitimate request. They came back and just told him, no, we're not giving it to you. And I remember thinking, who do these people think they are telling the president of the United States no? And you know what? Nothing ever happened. Nobody got fired. It wasn't pushed. He didn't ask again. It just lays there. Then, a little bit later, I remember hearing that between the time Trump had been elected and the time he took office, Obama had gone through the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, the White House staff, EPA, the IRS, and he had gotten rid of everybody that was an appointee, which means those are the people Trump could have put in there. Obama got rid of them all, rehired everybody under the Civil Service Act, so none of them could be fired, and the people he put in there were all ultra left wingers. So now you've got 6 departments filled with left wingers that can't be fired, serving a conservative president. So now it makes perfect sense. So, a sudden appropriation of leadership or power. That already happened before Trump even walked into the office. Now, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to show you how we know that it's been a takeover. And I want to show you how the deep state is in such control of these departments that when a crime has been done that is blatant, that everybody knows about, that there's proof about, that they talk about the proof, and still nothing is done. And then little teeny micro, really not crimes, are prosecuted to the full extent. Now, the first one I want to go through and talk about is Hillary. We know that Hillary is on the left. We know that under her administration and the Obama administration, that the coup was initiated and completed. And they reap and have continued to reap the benefits of that coup. She and her husband have blatantly broken the law. When she was confronted by Trump about she needs to go to prison, she said without any embarrassment at all, that's never going to happen. Well, how does she know it's never going to happen? Because they're in control of the deep state. Well, let's talk about some of the Hillary scandals that we know of, not the ones that we think, but the ones that we know of. Okay, the pay for play scandal, and I'm going to talk about one specifically. The pay for play, where a Saudi press gave millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, then requested a meeting with the Secretary of State and received it. Now, that happened many, many times. It's so obvious. We know that happened. There is pay for play at the Clinton Foundation. We know the loans from the Chinese. Hillary Clinton's brother went to China with Bill, and they strong-armed some Chinese investors over there to give them loans. And I don't remember the exact amount, but each one that gave, I think it was a minimum of $1 million, maybe 500,000, was promised to get a certain kind of visa. This visa is legal, and you can get it if you donate X amount of dollars, invested X amount of dollars in the United States, and create 10 jobs. Then you get your visa. So they gave Clinton the money and expected they were going to build a car plant, is what they were going to do down in Mississippi. And then Mississippi got in. They gave them the land. They built the thing. And the exact numbers escape me, but let's say there was 30 investors. They only hired, so that means they had to hire 300 people. But, they hired maybe 100. So there's many Chinese investors that were out their money, and they're not going to get their visas. The plant has since gone under. They never produced one car, and the money is gone. And now the Chinese have gotten together to sue the Clintons. This is all for the record. This is all facts, and we know this to be true. Another one is the uranium deal. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton sold to the Russians 20% of the American uranium in this country. The Russians own 20% of the American uranium located in this country. Now, not only is that wrong, but again, Bill received two $500,000 payments for speeches. The Clinton Foundation received over $141 million in donations from the guy in Canada who bought the company as an intermediary. At the exact time that the approval for the sale was going through Hillary Clinton's committee that she chaired as Secretary of State. She also had a couple of her cronies on that commission. They approved it. It went to Obama, and he approved it. Everybody involved in that has sold out America's defense for money. This is all fact. This can all be proven. There is a paper trail. We know this to be a fact. Nothing's been done. There's been no outcome, and we haven't even talked about Benghazi. We haven't even talked about, there's so many scandals involved with the Clintons, and nothing's been done. Okay. Now, there are three major scandals that I just touched on and went into some detail. If any one of us had done any of those, we would all be locked up in prison for treason, rightfully. When Hillary, went before the committee under oath to talk about the email scandal, which I didn't mention here, but that was another one that we all know to be true. She told many, many lies. In fact, Trey Gowdy, when he was quizzing Comey, asked Comey a series of about 10 questions, and he said it very plainly. He said, under oath, Hillary said, blah, 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 blah. Is that true? And Comey would come back and say, no, that's not true. Hillary Clinton said, blah, 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 blah. Is that true? And he would say, no, that's not true. And they did this 8 or 10 times. Now, let's go to the other side. That was the left wing. Let's go to the right wing. General Flynn, who has nothing to hide, has no scandals up his sleeve, has nothing to gain from lying about anything, was caught in one lie. And that was an accidental lie. When he answered the original question, he thought the question had to do with while Trump was running for president, not in the intermission, but he didn't make that clear. So they called it a lie. One lie. Now, what happened to General Flynn? They have harassed him. They have driven him from his job. He is now unemployed. They have harassed and threatened to go after his wife and son. And Flynn, when they attacked his son, he finally just said, fine, I give up. I will say whatever it is you want me to say, but you got to leave my family alone. So he comes out and says he's on the verge of bankruptcy. He's unemployed, he has no money, and he has a family. And all of this has been done by Mueller's investigation, also left wing, going after General Flynn, who told one lie. Does that seem fair to you? Doesn't that seem like two different levels of justice? Let's go to the next one. Comey. Now, we know for a fact that when Comey was the assistant head of the FBI, he knew about the uranium deal. He knew about the bribery the Russians were doing to the Clintons and others to get the deal through. They knew that it was a bad deal when it came through Clinton's committee. He knew all of that and said nothing. That makes him a co-conspirator. When he was the head of the FBI and Hillary lost, Comey is a left-winger, by the way, he lied. He was setting up Trump. He was involved in the P file. The P file is what I call that dossier that the British spy put together for Hillary and her election, which, by the way, was another felony scandal I didn't even get into. But what Comey would do, he got that file together and he made sure that it got distributed to the proper people so that it would be leaked to the press. So now that lies, because the press is going to repeat them over and over again, eventually becomes the truth in their minds. Then the memos. He would make up these memos after he would go see the president. True or not, it doesn't matter. You can't take memos that you make on the job out of the job. And he did. He gave them to a civilian friend of his who leaked them to the press. And he admitted all of this under oath in the committee. We know this to be a fact. This is not open for debate. And he did that. And when they asked him why, he said, because I wanted to get a special prosecutor to get Trump out of office. That was the motive. And it worked. Comey's old boss, Mueller, and friend, by the way, got appointed to be the special prosecutor. And Mueller also is an ultra left winger. Again, we have Comey creating a file, the P file, which was illegal. The government, a non-political party or another non-political department, is not allowed to have anything to do with politics, much less do an opposition file and pay for it with a foreign government. They can't do any of that. That's all illegal, and Comey did. Comey made illegal memos. He leaked them to civilians. Those are all, you can't do any of that. Those are all felonies. All to get Mueller appointed to the special counsel to get rid of the president. You can't do any of that. And yet, here it is, over a year later, and Comey is still free. He signed a $1 million book contract. He walks free. There's no investigation. There's no outcome at all. He's going to pay no prices. Why? The FBI, the Justice Department, the CIA, the executive branch, everybody knows that everything I just said is absolutely accurate, and yet nothing happens. Now let's talk about Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort was the campaign manager for Donald Trump in the beginning. Paul Manafort was effective but shady. As soon as Trump found out, he was fired from the Trump Foundation, from the Trump campaign. When Mueller, under his investigation, went after Paul Manafort, he went after Manafort to try to get something on him, to get him to flip on Trump. So he tore Manafort's life apart. What he got him on was all stuff that happened before he was, long before he was part of the Trump election committee. Had nothing to do with Trump. It had to do with money problems, registration problems with the government. I mean, the only real crime that he committed was money problems, you know, floating money between bank accounts, and serious, yes, nothing at all to do with Trump. But yet, Mueller, not only did he have this guy arrested, okay, Manafort was scheduled to go before the committee that day to testify. And you know what Mueller did? He stormed his house in a pre-dawn raid with guns drawn, busted in the door, scared and terrified that family to death, arrested him, took him out in handcuffs, tore up their house, and took everything they wanted. Under warrants that had been gained from the P file that was made up by Comey, that was all lies. They used that as a basis to get Manafort and the warrants to go get Manafort and to barnstorm the house and to terrify the family. Now remember, Manafort's a Republican, Mueller, left-wing Democrat. Nobody in that whole scenario on the left paid any prices. Comey didn't pay. Mueller hasn't paid. The cops who busted in the door never paid. The FISA warrant was never called into question. When the committees go to the FBI to get paperwork to try to track down who was on the FISA committee, who approved it, how they got it, the FBI just throws their hands up and says, nope, we're not giving it to you. It's not going to happen. At what point in this government did departments start telling the government and the executive branch what they will and won't do? They operate at the will of the president. The FBI, the CIA, and the Justice Department are all under the president. But that's not how they see it. You see what I mean when I say that the coup has already happened? It's just the only thing. It's like the head hasn't realized that the body is dead. The body's dead. The FBI, the CIA, and the Justice Department, as far as conservatives and Republicans are concerned, is dead. The head which would be Trump, is still alive. But it's alive only as a figurehead. Now let's talk about Mueller. Again, back to the left. The Mueller investigation in the last year has spent $3.5 million. It has 17 prosecutors, all 17 of which are former Obama or Clinton Foundation appointees or employees. They spent 1.5 years. They are an illegal organization. Now, there is a legal concept called fruit of the poison tree, which means, as an example, if a policeman pulls you over and searches your car without your permission, without a warrant, without probable cause, that's wrong. And let's say he does that and finds a gun. He arrests you for the gun, having a gun without a license. You go to court, and the judge asks you, do you have a license? No, I don't. How did you find it? And he tells a story about the cop. The whole case is thrown out, and here's why. The way that they found the gun was through an illegal seizure. The illegal seizure is the tree. The gun is the fruit. Okay? So they're prosecuting based on the fruit of a poisonous tree. Okay? That's my example. Now let's look at the Mueller investigation. The P file is the tree. Everything that comes from that P file, they can't legally use. Whatever they got on Flynn should be thrown out in court because they got it from the P file. They got the authorization, they got the warrants, they got the permission to go into the house, they got the arrest, they got the confession. Everything they got was from a poisonous tree. Same with Manafort. They got the FISA warrants to look into his background. They prosecuted him with 6 or 7 felonies, and he's fighting that. And all of that should be thrown out because they got all of that information from warrants issued based on the P file. So everything that Mueller has done so far based on this P file is fruit of the poisonous tree. So right now, as it stands, but now here's the really cruddy part. The investigation of Mueller is not really about legality. It's about politics. His job is not to convict these guys. He doesn't care 2 nickels about these guys. He's going after Trump. The impeachment of Trump is a political process. So it doesn't really matter on the political side how they got the information. If the information is true, they're going to use it. And even if it's not, they're going to use it. So when we look at Mueller, everything he's done is fruit of the poisonous tree. Secondly, Mueller, when he was the head of the FBI and Comey was the assistant head, he knew about the scandal. He knew about the 20% deal from uranium. He knew about the bribery of the Russians to the Americans and Canadians to get a hold of the uranium. He knew about all of that as the head of the FBI. When he got out of the FBI and then he came back in as a special prosecutor, he knew all about all of that. He knew everything about Hillary. He knew everything about Mueller or Comey. He knew about all of these scandals and has done nothing. Yet he spends all of his time, all of his money, all of his effort, all of his personnel to track down stuff from the P file. You know, there's a reason that they haven't found anything for collusion against Trump or anybody in his administration, because it never happened. The P file was a made up pile of lies. You can't make a made up pile of lies true just because you want them to be true. But again, he's on the left. Now think about all the crimes that Mueller has done and is still in the process of doing. And you know what? Nothing's going to happen to him either. Because the left is in charge of the CIA, the FBI, and the Justice Department. And if they don't want to prosecute, nothing's going to make them prosecute. President Trump came out and told Jeff Sessions to prosecute Clinton. Nothing's happened. Now, I'm just going to make a prediction here. What Sessions did is he lifted a gag order on a mole they had in the uranium deal. He lifted the gag order and said, okay, you can testify, but here's what's going to happen. The guy's going to go in there and testify. He's going to give them all the facts, all the evidence, and then Sessions is going to come out and say, I don't see any crime. I see a lot of shady stuff, but I don't see any crime, so I'm not going to investigate. That's what's going to happen. And my guess is most of this will be done behind closed doors so that we, the people, won't have any input. So when we, the people, look at this, we the people think there's two different measures of justice. We think it's if you have money versus if you don't have money, or if you're somebody versus if you're nobody. That's not the delineating point. The delineating point is left versus right. If you're on the left, you can do just about anything, and you will not be prosecuted by this government. But if you're on the right, if you just stick your toe over the line, they'll chop your toe off. That's the dividing line, because the left wants to take the power that they have gained, and they're going to multiply that, and they are going to have no problem at all flexing that power, because what are they going to do? Trump can't fire him. I mean, I have a suggestion. I think he needs to just eliminate the whole department. But I don't think anybody's going to go through that. Now, every one of the scandals, every one of the crimes, every one of the misdeeds that I have talked about on the left are all covered by the Constitution. The Constitution speaks to every one of those, but nothing's been enforced. Now, let me go back and read to you the definition of a coup: a sudden appropriation of leadership or power, a takeover. I'd rest my case. The coup has already happened. So, what can we do? Right now, we are facing a constitutional crisis. The left is blatantly using assumed deep state power to thwart the will of the people through trying to get rid of Trump, through stepping in the way so that the people's will not be done, so that Trump's agenda cannot get done and will not get done, because they won't do anything. The FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, and a majority of the liberal judges in this country are all corrupt. Now, when I say corrupt, do I mean money? Sometimes, yeah. But mostly they are corrupted by definition, not enforcing the Constitution. When you take any of these jobs, your job is to enforce the rules of the Constitution. They're not doing that. By any stretch of the imagination, they're not doing that. That makes them corrupt. And when I say liberal judges, let me give you an example, a current example. It is spelled out very plainly in the Constitution that the president has all rights as far as setting guidelines for legal immigration into this country. Every president has done that forever. Trump did it, and liberal judges, one in California, one in Hawaii, claimed it was illegal and couldn't do it, and it stopped. Now, it eventually gets done. But because these judges are putting their viewpoints before the Constitution, which is illegal, that makes them corrupt. We had a whole year of continued left-wing policy. And if they do that on every single thing that Trump wants to get done, they are purposely going against the Constitution and against what they promised to do when they took their positions. That, in my opinion, is treason. From Mueller to Comey to Bill and Hillary Clinton to the Rosenstein to the head of the Justice Department, the CIA, the FBI, they are all guilty of treason, and they need to be prosecuted. Now, in history, what history says is when the government gets to this corrupt, the people take arms and overthrow the government. That's what happens. If you go through and look in history, every time the government gets so corrupt, the people go to the streets and take it over. You can look anywhere in the world. That's the next logical step. And I promise you, it's close. Now, Soros, and again, on the left, is trying to fuel that. He wants that to happen because he believes that when that happens, the martial law will be installed and the left will take over and the conservatives won't have anything to say or do. We will have martial law, Trump will be overthrown, and they will have a leftist in power. The only thing that has stopped that so far is the fact that Americans have guns. If we didn't have our guns, we would be right now under the power of the left-wing dictator. Now, who's in charge of this? Everybody wants to blame Soros. It's not Soros. It's Obama. Charles Krauthammer did a nice article this week. And he talked about throughout the history of this country, we have never had an ex-president set up what is called a shadow government. When Obama left the White House, he bought a house 2 miles away in Washington, D.C., and had some of his ex-staffers move in. He organized a committee, and I can't remember the name of it, but he organized this organization that has 30,000 people in it, including Clinton, including Soros, including some of his ex-staff. And they are openly calling for resistance to President Trump. We've never had that before. How is that being allowed? If you resist your government, isn't that treason? At the very least, it's sedition. If the government was truly of the people, by the people, and for the people, then everybody I mentioned before, plus Obama, plus his ex-staff, plus the 30,000 that are resisting the government openly and promoting it openly, need to be charged with at least sedition. And Obama and Clinton both need to be charged with endorsing overthrowing the United States government, which is treason. That's what's going on here. The only solution I see right now is, okay, if you want to take the legal route, here's two solutions. First, the Trump administration needs to take the civil service people to court, and they need to get those contracts busted. At the very least, all the ones that were reclassified under the Obama administration. That needs to happen. What Obama did was rig the system, and that needs to be undone. But to be totally fair, incoming administrations need to have the power to bring their people in and get their agenda done. And they can't do that as long as the civil service has the power to say, go away, leave us alone. So that whole system needs to be re-looked at. The civil service people are the deep state, and we need to get the civil service done. Now, if he can get that done and go through and eliminate all of those positions that Obama redid, then you have a chance. I don't see that happening, but that's one possibility. The second possibility, and the one that I favor the most, to eliminate the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, the Education Department, the IRS, the Environmental Department, just eliminate them. And I don't mean by just not funding them. I mean, go through, fire everybody, eliminate the position, sell the buildings, sell everything in there, put the money into the Treasury, and do away with it. You know, we didn't even have a Department of Education until, you know, one of the presidents, I can't remember which one it was, just created it out of nowhere. We don't need it. We absolutely do not need it. Education is supposed to be done on the local level, not the federal level. That's why we never had one. Makes them. We need FBI and something like the CIA, but you're not going to be able to change it. You need to eliminate it, then start over. What is their responsibilities? How many people do we need? And go through and start over. Instead of having two separate ones, maybe have one organization. No civil service. And the new organization serve at the will of the United States president, just like the military. Let me go through and read this again. A coup is a sudden appropriation of leadership or power, a takeover. I submit to you the coup has already happened, except the head doesn't know that the body's dead. The body's dead. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about this week in politics. Now, at the end of this section, what I usually like to do is go through, and I usually pick out one or two events that have happened during the week, just so that we can kind of keep a chronology and keep events in order, so that people can't go back and rewrite history to suit their own narrative. We will have a digital history week by week. This week was a huge week, though. We have 4 or 5 different stories I want to talk about. The first one was the Supreme Court okays the travel ban. Now here we are in the month of December. Trump did this back in January or February, and it's been tied up in the courts ever since. Like I said in my segment, a whole year has passed. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, of course, said it's absolutely legal. You may continue. That happened this week. There is a huge fire out in California, which is not uncommon for them. The thing that's uncommon about this is the veracity of it, A, and B, the Santa Ana winds that are fueling it that is absolutely uncontrollable. And C, the location of it. It is right near 2 or 3 highly exclusive places. Bel Air is one, and it's very near Hollywood. It's right by the expressway. The video of this fire is absolutely awe-inspiring. But this week, the huge California fire happened, and that happened earlier in the week. And as of Friday, it was 10% contained, and that wasn't firm because the Santa Ana winds are expected to kick up again. Now, this coming week, as I record this, this is on Sunday. This Tuesday, people of Alabama are going to their special election to elect the next senator from Alabama. Watching my programs, you will know that I have supported Judge Roy Moore. I have pushed for it, and I excoriated Republican leaders to try to dump him really quickly as soon as and made accusations against him. And I did a program saying if all it took was accusations, then we should go after the left on every single one of them. Just go hire 10 people to say that they did stuff. That's what happened to Roy Moore. But that election is this Tuesday. Now, the interesting thing was this. On Friday, I went through the Wall Street Journal, and there was probably 8 or 10 articles that had to do with the election in Alabama this week, and every single one of them was anti-Roy Moore. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. The Wall Street Journal is used to be a right-leaning paper because it had to do with business. That changed after they got leadership. Change. Careful, you will, as a conservative, be sucked in because they have people like Karl Rove as commentators in the op-ed pages. But remember, it's not about Republican Democrat, okay? It's about establishment versus Tea Party. Karl Rove is establishment. Everybody that they've got on their editorial staff, as far as I know, is establishment. Republican or Democrat, they are all establishment. Establishment does not want Roy Moore in there. He is a conservative, he's an evangelical, he's a Christian, and he is nobody's boy. So they can't control him. They don't want him in there because Roy Moore will be a help for Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump came out and endorsed him a couple of weeks ago and actively endorsed him this week as it gets down to the election. It also has been proven, the one lady that had an accusation that claimed to have some proof, something about a yearbook, came out this week and admitted that she doctored the yearbook and had doctored the signature and it wasn't true. You know, a couple of days before the election, she comes out. But think of all of the damage that's been done since she did that. Now, as I said in last week's program, I think nothing should affect the election. People of Alabama should get their will. And then when the election is done, not the Senate, not the Congress, but the police should have an investigation. And somebody needs to go to jail. They say is true about him that he needs to go to jail. But if they were false accusations and they can prove it, then whoever brought that accusation needs to go to jail for the same amount of time. Now, this lady that brought this accusation did all of that damage to his career and his reputation. The election comes out and says, yeah, I lied. She needs to get the 20 or 25 years in prison. That will stop these false accusations. Careers are being ruined. Lives are being lost. Reputations are being sullied because women are making accusations. True or not? Also this week, Donald Trump came out and did what no other president had the stones to do, and he announced that he is moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem in 6 months. Now, Trump has caught a lot of heat for it, but there was a law passed under Clinton, at least as far back as Clinton. The Congress wrote up the law. They passed the law. The embassy was supposed to be moved years and years and years ago, but no president had the stones to go in there and do that because they were afraid to mess up. The truth of the matter is the deep state didn't want it moved, and the presidents weren't going to go against the deep state. Trump said, it's the right thing to do, we're going to do it, and deep state be damned. So he did it. He announced it, and of course, the hooligans over there started rioting and throwing stones and shooting missiles and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and Israel's handling it just fine. Israel is extremely pleased and happy. They could not be happier. They showed video of tens of thousands of Jews taken to the streets singing and thanking God for President Trump. The only people that are upset are the Palestinians, and who cares? You know, as Trump said when he made the announcement, Trump said, no other president has done that because they were told they would be standing in the way of peace. Well, here we are 30 years later, and we're no closer to peace now than we were 30 years ago. So what difference does it make? He's absolutely right. You do what is right and put the rest in God's hands. The right thing to do is to honor the capital that God said was the capital. And the Jews are ecstatic, and we as Americans should be ecstatic and back the president. Now, the last story that happened this week that I want to talk about was Senator Al Franken resigned. And then after that, in parentheses, I put LOL. So here's the story on Franken. Women came forward, said he had inappropriate things he did. Again, accusations, but this time they have pictures. I mean, of inappropriate behavior. So the pressure mounted, and then all of a sudden the leadership of the Democrat took over and asked him to resign. So he comes out and he says, in the next couple of weeks, I will resign. Now, why did he do it that way instead of just saying I resign? For several reasons. Number one, it was a publicity stunt designed to relieve the pressure and to get him off the front page. Secondly, it was to buy time until Judge Roy Moore comes in. And then Franken's going to say, well, if I got to go, he's got to go. He's going to use it as leverage. And I'll tell you, I was really surprised when he came out because I didn't think he would. Democrats never do that. Democrats never just give up. That's what Republicans do. Democrats stick in there no matter what. And the deep state covers for them, just like Hillary and Comey and Mueller. And they just hang around, and the deep state covers for them, and the press covers for them, and they keep their position. But anyway, he came out this week and said he was going to resign. I'll be surprised if he does. But if he does, I think that's fair because I remember how he got that seat in the first place. He lied and cheated and stole and did everything to get that, and he won by a few votes after weeks and weeks and weeks of cheating. So I think all's well that ends well, and I wish him good riddance and goodbye. He shouldn't have had that seat in the first place. But if he does resign, the Democrat in that state is the governor. He will appoint a Democrat. But the good news is that with Trump in office, there is a chance that a Republican could take that seat back over because they will have to have an election this next time in 2018. So there you go. And now, just an announcement. I want to say that all of our programs are written and produced by the Prayer Box Ministry. And you can find us online at www.prayerboxministry.org. That's O-R-G. That website was designed to be an interactive website. Go over there and check us out. See what we're all about. You can have somebody read the Bible to you. You can join a prayer group. You can watch the Right Wing Reverend. All the programs are streamed over there. There's a page over there for all of these programs. We haven't got them hooked up yet, but they will be. So go over there and check us out, www.prayerboxministry.org. Well, that's the program, everyone. I look forward to next week when we sit down and talk about this week in politics.